Erica Green, thank you for joining us here on Daily Blast Live. Let's get right into this. The article you contributed about TM Landry is generating a lot of buzz online, and obviously it's resonated here on our show. Personally, I had my own firsthand experience at the school. I spoke at their graduation as the keynote speaker, and I had a chance to spend a lot of time with their students and get to know them, or at least I thought I did. Can you tell me, let's just help me wrap my head around this. How can you tell me how you were first tipped off about this story?
I can't reveal my sources, but we did receive a tip that there were families in Breaux Bridge who were ready, had banded together, had decided that they wanted someone to know what had happened to their children. They, had a bad experience with Mr. Landry in the summer. I believe that it was pretty well known that there was a mass exodus from the school, and they wanted to share their story. They were very disappointed by what they learned from their children. They weren't getting anywhere with the local authorities, and decided that they wanted to go public.
Is there any more detail that you can give us about the accusations that the students have leveled against the founders and what Mike and his wife are saying back?
I think we laid it all out in the story. What we, had bulletproof, what we had verified, what we had multiple sources corroborating, we included in the story regarding transcripts, college applications, and the abuse that several students had witnessed and experienced. The Landrys did give us an interview, two actually. So we spoke with Mr. Landry on the phone. We went to the school and visited, and they basically deny any wrongdoing, with the exception of a few things, like having students kneel, yelling at students. And to some extent, a history of some physical abuse at the school. And we have not heard from them since the story was published, and we have not heard from them in follow-up questions that we sent before the story was published. And when we went to visit the school, which was our last time interacting with them, they deflected many of the questions we were asking to the students. So that they deny any wrongdoing, and anything that they wanted to defend about the culture of the school, they did so in the piece.
I was going to ask you, just personally, did you find the interviews forthcoming or contentious?
With the Landrys?
Yes, ma'am.
Our first interview with Mr. Landry, he was pretty forthcoming about, issues that we were not anticipating he might be forthcoming about, such as his a physical altercation or some physical abuse that he was charged with a few years ago. The kneeling, he was pretty forthcoming about that. Thought it was, something that was pretty normal for the school. That's just something that was unique to them. Berating students, when he asked them about that, he obviously admitted that he yelled a lot. But when we got into some nitty-gritty questions about documents and transcripts, those were evaded to a lot of extent. And throughout the process, they were as well. So it was interesting on some things that he felt he could defend as part of, their unconventional way of operating. He was very forthcoming. With things that were a little more problematic and had greater implications, he was not.
All right. Well, Mrs. Green, there are already kids from TM Landry that are attending schools, some of them in Ivy League schools, all across the country. What were your thoughts about publishing this piece and maybe even potential harm that could come to them, like, just their self-esteem and what their other classmates in college might say?
As you can imagine, that was a great concern of ours from the very beginning. We as people and as an education reporter, I watched the TM Landry videos over and over and over again. And we had some really hard conversations, both in our newsroom and with the graduates and the students and the parents about what could happen after this story was published. And what I drew, I took my cues from them. I cannot express how steadfast they were, that they thought it more important to tell the truth, to clear their conscience, to try to stop, some of these things from happening to other people, that they thought it was worth the risk. I have spoken with them today, and they still feel that way.
I appreciate what you've done. In the article, you allege that Team Landrys were encouraged to embellish and even lied on their transcripts. Do you know if this happened with the ACT or SAT scores as well? Obviously, I've read the piece, and what I took from it was that the kids were basically taught the test. They practiced the ACT test over and over again. And I saw the quote from the young man that said once he got to college, any question that he got in college that wasn't on the ACT, he didn't know it. So did it seem, because I think we need to make a clear delineation here, that were they teaching for the test, or were they altering actual numbers of the ACT and SAT scores?
No, we have no indication that the ACT scores were in any way false. I mean, they took them at a testing site. They did not take those tests at TM Landry. They, studied really hard for those exams, as they outlined in the story. That's what they did. They earned those scores. So we have zero indication that their standardized test scores were a part of this.
Right, and that definitely comes through in the piece. I just want to clarify that. I can't imagine what was going through your head when you wrote this, all the interviews you've done, and what this has all meant to you. And obviously, we were all just taken back by this story. What do you hope people take away from this expose?
What I hope people take away is children and students are capable of success without cutting any corners, if that is what we expect of them. And to take that opportunity away for them to work hard and get, reach their full potential, it hurts them in the long run. And that is what I hope people take away from this.
One thing you and I haven't...
They are resilient.
Please continue.
They are
Please
resilient. Continue. They are very resilient. They want to learn, especially Black students. There's already too much doubt about their potential in any kind of school, and in most school systems in this country, and it's not fair. When given the opportunity, when given the chance and the choice, they can work hard and reach their potential without cutting corners themselves or someone doing it for them.
Couldn't agree more. We spoke earlier about teaching towards a test, and this is, I'm going to take it back a little bit, but I remember being a young man watching Lean on Me with Morgan Freeman, and his main angst with that was teaching towards the test. You watch something like The Wire season 4 that covers the Baltimore public city schools, and that's about teaching kids only for the test. Do you think that we've set ourselves up to fail in the public educational system by having these state mandated test scores in order for the schools to get funding, and that then affects the students, the teacher's ability to teach and the students' ability to be interested in what's being taught if they're only learning how to take a test?
I mean, I covered the Baltimore City school system for 7 years before joining the Times, and that was definitely a tension, particularly in an urban school system. Whether or not children were getting a well-rounded education, or whether they were subjected to, mandates from the federal government and state government to perform to a certain level. That's definitely a concern, and I don't know if I can say we've done anybody a disservice, but I think we have numerous examples from the cheating scandal in Atlanta a few years ago to others of what can happen when the pressures of testing, are at their worst. In this case, I will say TM Landry is an independent school. They do not have to test. They don't have those mandates. They're completely unregulated and not accredited. So they're technically not held to those standards.
Right.
But for college admissions, I think it speaks more to what the value of standardized tests are in college admissions today, and I think that's much less explored.
I couldn't agree more. Final question for you, and again, Mrs. Green, it's been an honor and a pleasure to speak to you, and thank you for being so candid. If these accusations against the Landrys are true, what are the potential damages that they could be facing, whether they be punitive, whether they be legal? What are they actually looking at if these accusations are proven to be true?
I mean, unclear, and I wouldn't want to say anything that isn't true or hypothesize, but to lie on admissions documents to secure financial aid, that is problematic. I mean, that comes with consequences. I don't know what the local authorities will do about the abuse allegations, and frankly, there's a police report of that. Reports have been made. This has already been reported to them, and nothing happened. Whether it will now remains to be seen.
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you in your work and your diligent efforts in getting to the bottom of this. Mrs. Green, it's been a pleasure and an honor. And again, please, thank you for joining the DBL family, and don't be a stranger. We'd love to talk to you again about these kinds of issues.
Thank you so much for having me.